Welcome back to Question Period. This week we saw some premiers attempt to separate themselves from their federal party brands and counterparts. Over in Newfoundland and Labrador, the Progressive Conservatives snagged a landslide provincial by-election victory in a seat held by the Liberals since 2015. While the last standing Liberal provincial premier, Andrew Furey, still holds a majority in Newfoundland, this week's by-election win is the second seat-changing win for the province's Tories in as many months. Furey had this to say about the loss.
Every second hand I shook out there was, no, I don't work for the Prime Minister. In fact, the Prime Minister and I don't agree on many things like the carbon tax, and having to point them to the years of me fighting the Prime Minister and standing up for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians.
In Ontario, meanwhile, speculation is swirling that Premier Doug Ford could call an election sooner than the currently scheduled June 2026 over concerns about cuts a future federal Conservative government under Pierre Poilievre might impose, among other things. Ford has ruled out doing so in the next few months, but did not quash the rumor mill beyond that. Let's talk about all of that with our Sunday strategy session. Kathleen Monk was Director of Communications to the late Jack Layton. Corey Teneycke was Ontario Premier Doug Ford's campaign manager and former Director of Communications for Prime Minister Stephen Harper. And Scott Reid is former Communications Director to Prime Minister Paul Martin. Hey guys.
Hi there.
Before we get to all the exciting Canadian news, the big political story of the week, of course, was Donald Trump, and I wanted to get everyone's take on the conviction on all 34 charges. Scott, politically, what do you think it means?
I despair because after a clear and unequivocal assertion of the rule of law and the independence of the jury and the judicial system and the justice system, we now know that all of that is up for grabs. It's a jump ball in a November 5th presidential election. And, I really worry. What are the implications of, a president being convicted and yet having voters, in effect, overturn that result and provide him with their endorsement and in the process endorse his attitude and his conduct and his disrespect toward that justice system. So I'm really worried. I wish to Pete that Joe Biden would celebrate yesterday's victory in court by declaring that it will be an open Democratic National Convention that he's not going to re-offer as president. That's what I would really like to see, so that Trump gets the full force of an opponent who can take him on.
It does not look, Corey, like that's going to be the case.
No, it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. I do share that dream scenario with Scott. I think the Democrats would be much better served to not have Biden there. But look, I think this was the weakest of all the cases that was coming up against Trump in terms of its importance and the seriousness of the charges. This is basically a dispute about how one books, the hush money payoff that was clearly made. I don't think it changes anybody's view of Trump in the electorate. Those who hate him still hate him. Those who like him and think he's persecuted still think that. So it's such a polarized electorate that I don't think there are votes changing on this. And I think as the polls stand today, Trump is still the likely winner of the presidential race. So clearly it's not having a huge impact. Maybe that will change. I guess time will tell. But there are a lot of indications that it won't. This isn't the first unprecedented thing to happen with Trump in this respect. We've never seen a former president facing the myriad of charges that Trump is, and it hasn't really affected his popularity other than to push it higher. So I think it's going to be a lot of sound and fury in the media. I think it's going to make it very difficult for the Biden campaign to get out any competing message on anything. It's just going to suck up all the oxygen in the room and not really frame the campaign in a way that's different than it is today.
What's your gut tell you, Kathleen, about the degree to which it might impact, in particular, the mushy middle in those swing states? Because Corey's right, in 5 of 6, the most recent polling shows Trump is leading Biden outside of the margin of error. But this is not the trial taking place. There's now a conviction. Do you think that the difference matters?
Yeah, I think what matters and hasn't been commented on is that 12 ordinary Americans convicted Trump, right? These were ordinary people, educators, some with business backgrounds, who said he's guilty. guilty of this. And I think that matters. And I think that this is the only case, as they say, the experts say, this is the only case that will actually get to a conviction before the election in November. So it is significant, and it shows that like wisdom, integrity, justice matters. Trump, since January 6th of 2021, has railed against democracy, and in this court process, he's railed against the judicial system. And I think now the tides are turning, and I think that we should all give a little bit of credit to Stormy Daniels, who's probably going to have a significant legal and political impact in this election, because don't take our advice. We're Canadian political strategists. Talk to Karl Rove, who is the most hailed Republican strategist in the States. And he has said that actually a conviction of Trump in this case will have an impact on those swing states. So we don't know the impact yet. We don't know what if even Trump's going to be sentences. We got like 6 weeks to wait that out to July 11th. We don't know the impact July 11th. We don't know the impact on November 5th. So let's wait, see how this plays out, and most importantly, see how, frankly, Biden tries to capitalize on this conviction.
And oh, by the way, there's a debate in the middle of it all as well on June 27th. We will reconvene on that subject for sure. I'm going to switch back to Canadian politics because I want to get your take as well on that by-election to start, Scott. I know, and the four of us have talked about it before, lots of times by-elections have sort of certain characteristics that allow for them to be kind of counted less than a full election. In this case, I mean, the comment from the premier, the last standing Liberal provincial premier, Andrew Furey, I think, deserves some discussion. What do you read into the outcome of that by-election?
I think it's a big deal, and by-elections usually aren't a big deal. If you win that state, if you lose them, you can dismiss it as a potential protest vote. It's kind of a freebie for electors. But I look at this by-election in Newfoundland, the comments afterward from Andrew Furey. I look at, in particular, this June by-election in St. Paul's, a super safe Liberal riding where the Liberals have, more or less doubled the Conservative vote for at least the last 15, 20 years. And I think these are going to be consequential. And I think they're going to be consequential because I think they matter to the Prime Minister. People think prime ministers are just like these, figures that operate above and beyond the reach of human impact. And that's not true. We all know they care about their team. They actually care. Their eyes are open. Their ears are open to what their allies say. When he hears someone like Andrew Furey saying that, he pays attention. And I'm telling you right now, I just got to believe that if that by-election in St. Paul's is close, like if it's single digits, or God help the Liberals if it should actually end up being a surprise loss to the Conservatives, I think that that's going to have a major effect on the Prime Minister's outlook about his own future. And forget all the clucking about what will Liberals say, will it scare them. Think about him. He's going to be sitting there thinking to himself, am I an anchor on everyone around me? And do I want to continue on under those terms? I think that's how important these by-elections, particularly the one in St. Paul's, will be. And I should say, my good friend Leslie is running as a Liberal candidate there, so I'm not praying for a bad result, but I am predicting that it will matter.
Leslie Church, the former Chief of Staff to Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland. Corey, the St. Paul's is one of the safest seats for the Liberals in the entire country. When they were wiped off the map and they were left with 11 seats, one of them was in St. Paul's, former longtime cabinet minister. I think Carolyn Bennett won 9 successive elections in that riding. And Scott kind of referenced this, but what does an outcome look like that would prompt that kind of look in the mirror for the Prime Minister in that riding?
Well, it'd be like a Kathleen win 2018. Like at one point, the Liberals were down to 2, and they wound up getting 7 seats. Technically,
our tracking had us at 0.
So
correction.
So how low can it go in
we
Ontario?
Was scared.
It can go to 0 hypothetically, but it can go very, very low. And I wouldn't say that it's impossible for the Conservatives, given the sizable Jewish community within that riding, to pull off a surprise there. That said, I don't think it's, I don't expect a win. I'm probably closer to where Scott is, where you end up with a number that scares the bejeebers out of everybody else in the province of Ontario who's a current member of the Liberal caucus, where they apply those results to their riding and say, geez, looks like I'm not going to win. And that you see a whole bunch of panic in the ranks, and you see more people pushing to have a leadership change. I don't think that things are as bad as they're going to get with respect to caucus relations and caucus panic within the federal Liberal Party. And I think this by-election could be a catalyst for even more.
Your thoughts on that, Kathleen?
Yeah, I think it's much more important to focus on the St. Paul's than what happened in Newfoundland. Newfoundland politics are very local. That candidate was working hard since the last election to gain back that seat. I'm more interested actually in looking at what the premiers provincially are doing and how they're maneuvering. They're seeing these seismic forces of public opinion polling on the national level, and they're afraid of, frankly, a blue tsunami coming to hit them. And so you've seen over the last, we know there's scheduled 3 provincial elections this year, BC, Saskatchewan, obviously in New Brunswick, but other premiers like Premier Ford in Ontario and potentially Premier Furey in Newfoundland are considering moving up their elections because they're afraid of what's happening on the national level. And that is interesting to me, that dynamic of how premiers are reacting to what's happening on the national level.
I just have 5 seconds. So, Corey, when's the election going to be? Can you just tell us?
Yeah, please.
Well, in Ontario, that's a decision for Premier Ford.
Right.
Guys like I don't get to make that decision. But
if you could, what would you decide?
Yes.
I would say no matter what, I don't like the idea of fixed election dates. I think they're not a part of our system of government. I think they should have never been brought in. I think that it doesn't make sense to change our system of government to be something that looks more American, like fixed election dates. And I don't think they should be in place. I think they never should have been there.
Okay, so I think we have our answer. We'll be looking forward to covering that election soon.
Bride goeth before the fall.